Alright, this is Fullest House, first edition, where we are playing Vaettiheim. It is turn 34. So let's see what Pangea is going to do. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention last turn, we are claiming the Throne of Air. We did manage to get our, not our Pretender, our Prophet in position. So yeah, always nice to see yourself up there on the throne claims. And we've talked about how that is a pretty nice throne for us to be grabbing. Oh yes, and we are also, another thing I forgot to mention, we're doing our first transformation. And yeah, right, we're Misfortune 3, so we're going to be seeing a lot of this. However, we're transforming twice-born mages, so in this case, she's just going to turn into a white mage. So this was just a very expensive way to kill off one of our mages. I think it's like 8 nature gems. But like we are hoping to get like some decent chassis out of this, although in this case, I think we're just going to get a normal white mage. Uh-oh, and there's a dire portent. Let's see if this is Mother Oak. Yep. Right, of course, Utgard also gets a decent amount of nature. So, like, yeah, this is unfortunate. And, of course, I saw, like, our god just woke up this turn. Although we need our Construction 6 research before I think even our god could cast it. We'll have to double check. So, we could try to overcast. There's a good chance that this is a minimum cast. And, you know, we have enough nature gems right now that, like, we could probably... Like, yeah, we could probably overcast this, but you know, we have a non-aggression pact with Utgard. Overcasting and like dispelling people's globals when you have a non-aggression pact is kind of like one of those gray areas. Like, certainly it's not a friendly move. And I think there definitely are plenty of people that would feel that, you know, it's kind of breaking the non-aggression pact. You know, I don't know. I'm a little more neutral, but in this case, we don't really need it. It would be nice, right, for like that transformation stuff that we're planning on doing, but I think at least currently the limiter is actually going to be our death gems with the twice-borning. So yeah, we've talked about how, you know, I didn't really originally plan for Mother Oak. It was just one of more of those like, hey, wait, maybe we could cast Mother Oak, but you know, just yeah. You really do want to plan for the globals ahead of time because otherwise you're going to get beaten to them. But we are spending some nature gems, speaking of nature gems, to bring in our patrollers. We miss with some site searching, but we do find a site. Shrine of the Outcast. I'm not sure. I feel like you can get foul spawn from that, but it may not actually give you any gems. Let's take a look, if I remember, which is a pretty good chance I won't. And then, yeah, here we are. Our god has awoken, and that is nice. He is a rainbow, has a lot of different paths, some of which we don't really have too much of, if I recall. And eventually, he will be the one to bring in Nephil Jarls for us. And then it looks like Raga is attacking Archocephaly in Archocephaly. So let's see if Archocephaly is doing any patrolling. Doesn't look like it. I think this is just province defense. So let's take a look at, you know, what Raga is doing. And like, yeah, this, you know, kind of looks like what we've seen before from them. Although, yeah, this is a bunch of heavy infantry instead. I think before, you know, he's using some militia. And like, yeah, these guys are decent. You know, they're little... Sorry, I thought that was gold. They look like they would probably be a little expensive, but their skills are decent, and you know, high protection, the built-in fire resistance is nice, but like mostly it's a ton of these Yedins, they're sacreds that are going to matter. They do have some crossbowmen, I like that. I feel like there's a good number of crossbowmen, like they haven't over-invested in crossbowmen, but they have enough that, like, yeah, you gotta think about, like, especially for us, you know, some of our mages could absolutely get sniped by some crossbow bolts, you know, so we're going to have to take that into account if we do fight them, and we're definitely going to need a lot more chaff to deal with these fellows, but there's like basically no mage support there, which could be good news or could be bad news, right? Maybe they recognize as like, well, we don't really need any mage support, and they just have a ton of mages at home doing a bunch of research, and they're going to roll out with like some really nasty research, you know, for their next war. But at least in its current configuration, right, I think like all the bugs, plus foul vapors, you know, plus our troops, I think we'll be fine against that army. And our blood hunting actually, you know, went okay, so it's nice that, you know, that's starting to go a little better. And then we have some of our raids. Let's see, yeah, these are some of our mages. A little bit of skelly spam. Yeah, okay, so Arco looks like either there's a mystic here that we couldn't see, or he decided to consolidate into this province, which, you know, in retrospect, maybe that's kind of more obvious, because he doesn't have that many troops left, so, like, yeah, he's probably moving the commander in, you know, to try to pick them up and get them out, which I think is... yeah, I mean, well, it's probably going to work out in this case, at least, you know, against our raid. But I think the likelihood of these mystics, you know, being able to lead these troops out to the promised land that is now filled with Raga is unlikely. But then again, like, why not collect some troops and do what you can with them? because like I said, they're unlikely to ever make it home, and there probably isn't going to be a home to go home to. So, we lose our raiders, but again, they've been twice born, so like, yeah, we get a bunch of hags, or white hags this turn. So that's fine, although a little on the sad side. And then Pangea attacks us somewhere with everything. And this looks, I think they're headed back to their capital, which I had a feeling they might do that. I didn't really know for sure, but yeah, it was like kind of 50-50. Either they roll at us or, they start heading home, which, like I said, that's fine with us. Not actually really interested in their capital. Like, we will pick it up, if Marignon moves really slowly, but for now, focused on Abyssia, that throne, and then, of course, Raga, right? Like, we'll probably roll this war, against Pangea and sort of Arco, like, right into a war with Raga. We'll see. We definitely do need to make sure that someone, either us or Marignon, takes care of that Pangean army first before we attack into Raga, I think. But yeah, I think it'll be fine, right? And this is us going against those barbarians. So yeah, let's see, just some bodyguards, some point buffing. Against, not a ton of barbarians. It was like 30 or 40, a little bit of Frozen Heart, and then like, they don't have very good morale, so that helps a lot. And then of course the Body Ethereal is a really big deal, because they just have mundane weapons. So yeah, I don't think we take any losses there. Like, yeah, Veti Berserkers, especially when they've been buffed up, are pretty scary. Though again, barbarians don't really have much in the way of armor, so kind of a best case scenario for us, right? This is the accidental crossbow raid. And the Mystics did hang out, although they probably don't have any gems, but Body Ethereal, right, in the same way that we just utilized it, is going to be a problem for mundane crossbowmen to deal with this. So, like, yeah, they're just going to waste all their ammo at long range, and luckily Arcocephaly doesn't have much in the way of research, so, like, yeah, those mages just run away. Not my best, most efficient raid ever, but it does work out for us. And then Marignon is, I think, attempt number 3, I think, for this storm. Okay, so now he's gone in with the Pretender, and more or less just the Pretender, with some chaff, to try to distract, although perhaps too much chaff, because these Horned Serpents, while there's not that many of them, they do have a lot of hit points. Yeah, and because he's in hostile dominion, the hit points on his Pretender aren't that high. So that's a little on the concerning side. That said, Caelum might actually struggle to kill off those snakes fast enough to actually HP route the army. And it looks like she's just going to go in. I did not actually pay attention to her kit. She has a ton of attacks because she gets her snake skirt, or I guess maybe she. It's not really clear to me. Regardless, their snake skirt gets an attack, and then they, of course, 2 snake heads, so Venomous Fangs also attacks, and then they've got 2 weapons. Some kind of lower level construction research. I think these are construction 2 items. Although I think some of these other ones are construction 4. So he's got, shock resistance, definitely very relevant, 40. So he's actually not really going to have to worry too much about the lightning. And then he's got regeneration from his own casting. And then a decent amount of reinvigoration. Yeah, he's fatigue positive, so that's good. Won't fall asleep. And then, plenty of attack, so plenty killy and a little bit of magic resistance gear, because, why not, right? You never know. Yeah, I think as long as, the HP route doesn't happen, because, there goes the snakes, I think, it's going to work out fine for Marignon. But yeah, it looks like, well, not quite all the snakes are off. I'm not sure whether it's when they route or when they actually make it off, when it potentially triggers the HP route. But it looks like regardless, she did not route, or they did not route the snakes and the snake skirt. And the archers aren't, yeah, armies of Marignon are routed. That's probably just a morale failure, I'm guessing, right? They did take some afflictions, and yeah, you can see there's mostly 0 points of damage, but yeah, I do see there's an 8 point. The protection isn't super high. Yeah, there's a 17, got hit in the head. Right, of course, because actually the protection is pretty high, but you can't put a helmet on this creature. So no helmet slots, so those head hits really hurt. And I'm guessing probably something like that, is what triggered the route. And man, this is just, this is rough. I feel for Marignon, Sometimes things just don't go your way. So, yeah, I don't think there was anything particularly wrong with that attack. If you can find some way to work flight in, and Marignon does get some air, right? So either with the boots, the flying boots, or even a mage possibly to try to cast flight, on the pretender. Which can be kind of difficult because the targeting is a little all over the place, but it's like maybe just bring the pretender and the mage. And then fly to the back, right? And that'll hopefully work. But like, yeah, and they, eventually they can get a hold of Aerofend, which is the only way to get like air shield onto the pretender. And maybe they could do storm or something like that to try to deal with the wall archers. Although I think if they fly to the back, it'll work out. We anger a monster boar, and I really hate these monster boars. They're really hard to patrol out. And we are already stretched in terms of our patrol groups. And then, yeah, somebody got wounded. That's fine. Got horror marked. And then, yeah, some people died thanks to a harsh winter. It's not like we're planning on casting Ill Winter eventually or anything. So there's an arena deathmatch coming up, or, yeah, and a people's deathmatch specifically. So no spell casting. So we probably won't send anyone. Yeah, it's got to be this turn. So, yeah, we definitely won't send anyone. Because there still are some giant nations left, and like, yeah, the goblins, like 1v1 in melee, that's not really their thing. And yeah, I'll catch you guys after the jump. All right, this was the situation and what we did about it. Most importantly, we are rolling out with our army towards Abyssia's old capital. We can see that Pangaea has left a defense behind, but not too much. There are some mages here, so we do have to consider that, but definitely something we can handle. Of course, it is a citadel, so it will take us a few turns to siege through. 750 wall integrity, plus some units holding up the walls. And in terms of siege strength, we've got 511. Best case scenario, we won't actually quite have that because there's at least a few units that aren't moving out. But still, it won't take us too many turns to get through it once we jump on top of it. Interestingly, I've chosen to move out stealthing some of the army. Don't actually recall why I did this, potentially trying to draw Pangaea into a fight, but this is a little risky. Definitely, I feel like for Vaettiheim's Doom stacks, when you want to utilize their cap-only mages, it's pretty difficult, right? Because, they're not stealthy. So if you can get a hold of that Death Earth crosspath for those shade mails, it'd be pretty expensive to shade mail up, all of your cap mages. But, a subset of them so you can have a stealthy army is worth considering. Of course, we have a lot of our giants here, or a decent number of our giants here for siege strength. They're not stealthy, so, we're kind of stuck having a non-stealthy component. We have Horde of Skeletons for that non-stealthy component. There's also some Foul Vapors in here, which probably a misscript. No gems to support it. And we would not want to cast Foul Vapors with this army without some poison resistance spells. So we'll see, but, from what it looks like, we're primarily relying on point buffing the Rimvetti, which is, of course, very expensive in terms of mages, and, many crossbowmen. This has worked pretty well for us in the past, and I think should be able to handle, what Pangaea is rocking. Though, yeah, it's neutral scales here, right? We probably won't be fighting in cold. Rimvetti do prefer to fight in cold, so that's a consideration. Also, of course, it is in a cave, but we do have Dark Vision on the Bless, so, we will get some stat penalty, but actually not as much as Pangaea will get. So in this case, fighting in the cave is actually a benefit for us, though normally it would be a wash for Vaettiheim. We are also sending kind of an enlarged raid. We're moving forward with the crossbowmen still, and figured, they're out there, keep using them. But we're also bringing up a, this is not a wolf brother, Veti Goad. Giving him a Frost Brand. I think we're going to throw on, some Body Ethereal, and Luck hopefully is going to get on him. We'll see about these guys. They don't really have the hit points to be super effective thugs, but they have, decent stats. Strength, of course, is a problem like it is for all Veti. But, the Frost Brand deals damage that doesn't rely on the strength, so it could work. Regardless, we have other supporting elements, so I think this raid will probably be fine. Yeah, there's only a single Mystic, probably not a lot in the way of province defense, because it's pretty unlikely that Argocephaly is making any money, because they're pretty much out of this game. I don't think they really have anything that can stand up to this force from Raga. Also of note, we got hit by the replay bug, which is kind of interesting, because that last one was recorded at about the right time. But Marignan actually took the capital here. In the version that I watched just now, they got a smaller dice roll of snakes, so there were fewer snakes, and there was no rout, so I'm not sure if, that was the difference. But regardless, they did take the capital. The eagle-eyed among you may have noted that there was actually a message that Caelum had been eliminated. So yeah, the Caelum War is over. Marignon is, free to pursue other things. I am expecting that they probably will attack Pangaea, but they might not want to do it immediately. This army's not that big. Obviously, it's taking a lot of losses trying to take Caelum. So they may need a few turns to, either recruit reinforcements or bring up reinforcements. I don't think what they have here will be able to handle what Pangaea has, though the god is a bit of a wild card. As I recall, I think they're using quite a few. Yeah, these Grove Guardians, they deal enough damage that it'd be pretty difficult to super combatant this. I guess, as long as you have your defense high enough, though I don't think that Pretender had an amazing defense. Anyway, these guys are definitely a reason, to give pause, right, before you just send your Pretender in. So we'll see what Marignon does, but I am expecting him to move against Pangaea relatively soon. Also, not as important, but is a little sad. We had another replay bug. That beautiful battle against the Barbarians wasn't quite as beautiful. We did still win, but we lost one of our mages, actually. So maybe not quite as foolproof as I'd hoped. Otherwise, relatively low troop recruitment. We do have a recruitment of the Sacreds in the capital, a few Wolf Brothers over here. And then a few Berserkers, probably just to replace expected losses. We have had some success in the transformation area, so the ones that died, right, they just turn into the normal size 1 White Hags, which aren't great, but are still better than, the regular Veti chassis, at least in a lot of ways. Obviously, the undead, have a few weaknesses. But not having to pay upkeep is a huge upside, and they are faster and have more hit points, so they're a bit more survivable in other ways, right? Morale is much higher. I think overall this is probably an upgrade with some significant weaknesses, but a better transformation result is something like this Great Spider. Now, we're going to want it to turn into a White Mage sooner rather than later. The Great Spider is, if this was the end result, that wouldn't be great because magic resistance 4 is really the biggest problem. This is like a huge issue, especially if you want to use it as a thug. Of course, you couldn't really use it as a thug anyway because it only has 2 slots. But, since it is twice born, once it dies, the key thing is, size 6 would be best. Because I believe there are 4 White Mage chassis, right? So if you're size 1, you end up with that White Hag that we just looked at. If you're size 2 or 3, you end up with, I think, a normal human-sized White Mage chassis. If you're size 4, you get like an intermediate giant chassis. And I think that goes for the size 5s as well. And then size 6, there's an additional chassis, I think similar to the looks at least, to the Tartarian. So anyway, once this dies, it should turn into a size 4 White Mage, which is definitely a thuggable chassis, because it'll have full slots. So anyway, we're continuing with this nonsense. Yeah, we have another transformation happening this turn. We'll keep an eye on that, as we continue with it. We do have one other raid, and then moving our Wolf Brothers into position. Not sure how much province defense is here, and of course this is right next to the capital, so could move something out to defend. Actually, this army could move here. Doesn't really look like it, but it is connected. So you will probably raid this province that we failed on before, because pretty unlikely Pangaea is going to move forces up into there. It's a backwater, it's a dead end. So it should be a relatively safe raid for us. What is not a safe raid is the raid here, which again is being done with Twiceborn Mages. So, we'll see what Pangaea leaves behind, if anything, but, hopefully they won't leave anything and we'll take that as well. In terms of the wider world, nothing too interesting this turn. We are continuing to scout. It does look like Pythium is relatively small. We're getting this scout over into Satis' territory. Satis, of course, has already eaten Lemuria, so they're at least a two-nation sized, roughly. And it does look like they're, true two-nation sized. Like, haven't actually made it over to Lemuria's old territory in a while, so we'll have to see. But they're looking relatively large here, and probably at the expense of Atlantis. We still haven't really discovered Atlantis. I had to double check. They are still alive, but yeah, we've scouted around a lot of areas, so they must be contained in here. So Atlantis looking pretty unhealthy, despite the fact that we haven't really found them yet. So we have found Phlegra, so we're gonna try to take a look at their territory. Otherwise, just kind of have some scouts scattered around in Raga's territory. They are probably the next person that, we're most interested in. Also potentially of note, looks like Vaettiheim has really dug in. Gath lost a scout here, and I think this is maximum province defense investment. Vaettiheim, of course, I think down to just one province, maybe two provinces, so, they're not going to win the game or anything, but something like this can be really annoying to deal with, so yeah, it could be tough for Gath. That said, it is at least, only monkey province defense, so, maybe some morale plays or something like that. Sometimes a ton of chaff can actually, hurt you. But still, that's a lot of stuff to chew through. So anyway, I think that more or less covers turn 34.